Hey there, folks. Ben Farrell for Ben Farrell Freelance. This is a special Christmas episode, so obviously we're going to talk about our favorite Christmas movies. Hey there, folks. Ben Farrell for Ben Farrell Freelance. This week we were talking about Christmas movies, and not just Christmas movies, but the ones that you always want to see every year as Christmas comes around. You all have your own, but in my opinion, it should not be Die Hard. It should be Christmas Vacation, and it should be A Christmas Story. So if you haven't seen those, and I recently found adults who haven't seen them, shame on them, I can't be friends with them anymore. This week we're going to talk about why those two movies specifically have legs to always get shown on TV. It's just a part of a lot of people's Christmas traditions, especially mine and my special guest. Helping me with this week's episode is someone that I've been doing a lot of creative things with over the years. His name is Brian G. Feltz, if you don't know who he is already, but he is one of the two co-hosts of Brian and Ben's Movie Corner and MP3 Movie Talk Show that was quite popular for 4 years that we were co-hosts of. We've done some stage works together, we've done some screen works together, and I'm very happy to have him on the computer so we can talk about these two movies, because guess what? It also happens to be his Christmas tradition to watch these movies as well. So we're going to say hello to Brian, who is in, where are you in Texas?
Hey, Ben. I am actually in a small town called Nacogdoches, Texas, about 2 hours north of Houston and 2.5 hours southeast of Dallas.
So yeah, I had asked you what you were doing for Christmas Eve, and you said the usual tradition of watching A Christmas Vacation and A Christmas Story. And I said, well, obviously I'll be doing the same. Let's get on the phone. And then after that, Brian and I had decided, since we're going to talk about the movies anyway, we're going to turn this into an episode, and this will be our special Christmas episode. So right out of the gate, why Christmas Vacation, which is a National Lampoon movie, and why Christmas Story?
Well, for me, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, I like it because of the outrageousness combined with the sweetness, if you will. Because everything that Chevy Chase did, especially in the 80s, and I believe Christmas Vacation was 1989, Chevy Chase was very silly, very lampoonish in many of his other movies of the 80s. But in this movie, the reason why I like it so much is because Clark, who's played by Chevy Chase, is trying to give his family the best Christmas ever. Now, he almost screws it up almost every which way he can.
Right.
But at the heart of the matter for the movie is that he's still trying to give his family the best Christmas vacation, best Christmas dinner, the best gift, and buying the pool. Everything he's working towards is doing it for his family, which actually makes him a great husband, great father.
Right.
It's just, how he gets there is kind of, challenging.
Right.
So that's my take on Vacation.
Well, for me, with Christmas Vacation, with the writing, the writing is like you said, where each thing that goes wrong is it gets very exponential, especially when the family shows up and there's problems there and such like that. But from the writing standpoint, that's the brilliance of that. But otherwise, that movie is made by Chevy Chase, But I agree with his characters, because a lot of the things that happen aren't his fault. He does do some bonehead things like not bringing a saw to cut down the tree and those types of things. But generally speaking, a lot of these things happen to him. A lot of the funny things in that movie are identifiable, because I can't stop giggling every time I'm putting up Christmas lights just because of that movie. It always just reminds me of that scene. And that's why I like that movie. And that's why I always make a point to see that movie, because it's those things that you can relate to. You keep giggling as you go through your year and you do those things. So writing is not its strength, except for that it really does well to mount what happens to him and what he ends up doing by mistake. I'll still say that probably my favorite scene is him watching all those home movies in the attic, and then the mother-in-law pulls down the thing, and that to me is brilliant, because that's why he's trying to do the Christmas. He's watching the movies of him trying to create a Christmas that he remembers as a kid, And then what was great later was the conversation with his father after he had his huge fit. and his dad is just like, I don't know how you remember it, but it didn't go off as well as you thought it did. But the kids aren't going to care. So, anyways, I think in that regards, that's where it was strong writing wise, is his character. But as far as plot goes, it was just, let's just make the next thing even worse than the last thing, and lo and behold, you're laughing the entire time. So
now, Christmas Story, I remember watching with my dad, and my dad was probably about 6 years older than Ralphie was in The Christmas Story, so he was a little older in the 50s, but he was still very nostalgic watching him. And then going into Ralphie's brain, which is the brain of a 8-year-old, which whenever you got grounded or when Ralphie got his mouth washed out with soap, you have that scene where he's comes walking in on a cane and he's blind because of smoke poisoning. As a child, whenever you get in trouble, at least I don't know if kids get in trouble anymore, but back in the 70s when I would get in trouble, and since my room, I would always, be sniffling just like Ralphie. Right. And not wishing the world, but, vengeance is mine kind of thing, Right. And so there's that aspect of it. That's kind of why it means a lot to me. As a matter of fact, in another few minutes, it will be Christmas Story will be starting its 24-hour run on one of those networks. So, and I'll be, once we get done doing our thing here, I'll be back in my back in my other room where the TV is, and doing stuff, and it'll be on. Even though there's football galore going on today, it'll be on.
At the time that movie came out, I was asking my parents for a BB gun. The going to the windows to see the displays, we would do that. Going for the mall Santa trips, and I grew up in Providence, so there was tons of snow at Christmas time, always, and waking up to it and coming out and seeing everything under the tree, thinking Santa had been there. Again, I loved what you touched on a little bit. I loved the narration of him as an older adult, but being as dramatic as he would have seen it when he was younger. The interactions with the bully, with Scott Farkas and his toady, because his description of that with the voiceover is so brilliant. You can't help but laugh at that such. Also, when he's talking about his dad's language when he's fighting with the furnace downstairs, or obviously the "Oh fudge" scene, the voiceover there was completely dramatic. And I still think my favorite line as far as the voiceovers go is Randy just laid there like a slug. It was only his only defense. So I use that to this day.
I almost think we should mention, if we can, I don't know how, the scene where he, imagines getting the BB gun and he's shooting all the bad guys. Right. Which is so not PC today. Right. But that, to me, that was one of my favorite scenes, just because, again, it's the exaggeration of the child's imagination of the Old West. When it first came out, we were teenagers, younger or older teenagers, but we were both teenagers. Mm-hmm. We could almost relate more to Ralphie than we could the older Ralphie who's narrating. But now, like for you, your dad, 3 kids, you can relate to the narrative. Yeah. And you get the jokes a lot more now than you ever did when you were 13, 14 watching it for the first time. Right. And to that point, I'm also starting to imagine how my kids will describe me. I relate to how Ralphie saw the world in that movie because that's kind of how I saw my world at the same time. But now that I'm a dad, I'm more cognizant of how the kids might be seeing their world too, and how dramatic it might be for them. So there you have it, Brian and Ben's Movie Corner, reunited for one night just to talk about the 2 greatest Christmas movies ever made, in our opinion. I still like Die Hard though. Just to let you know, we are not going to continue with weekly episodes, but we are going to do an episode every month and possibly 2. We do have some special things coming up. We have a special Valentine's Day episode coming up, and we also have a special guest that we're going to have in January who specializes in 10-minute plays. And if you don't follow me on social networking, my latest stage play is actually out and ready to be purchased, and the link to do so is in the description of this episode. This is Ben Farrell for Ben Farrell Freelance. Have a Merry Christmas, and thanks for hanging out with me.